Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan,
Hello and greetings.
and we're continuing the Plantagenets podcast. On May 18th, in 1152, Henri, Duc de Normandy, and most importantly, Comte d'Anjou, and also legitimate heir to the side title of King of England, married Alienor, Duchesse d'Aquitaine. Now, I reiterate, the reason I call him Henri is because he would not have called himself Henry, and bear in mind, English might be one of the most popular languages of today. Back then, not so much. And England was really a backwater in that era. And the real prizes for Henri were Aquitaine, Normandy, and Anjou, basically his French holdings, not his English ones. But he did need the prestige of kingship to hold himself toe-to-toe with the likes of Louis and other monarchs around. And Henri was a guy who loved his inheritance. He wanted to take it to its most logical conclusion. And like all Angevin, he liked a little, or I should say Plantagenet, he liked a little conquest. The trouble for him was that, how do I put it? He wedded his conquest to political skill, but this was assuming. The trouble is, he would need people on his side who would be conciliatory enough to help him with the management and the just diplomatizing with neighbors and internal servants and vassals, but he never quite got the help he needed in a lot of different ways. He did, but he didn't. He had a lot of clerks and whatnot who helped him. The trouble is, in terms of the people who wielded power or felt they should wield power, he was screwed. Much as he chose to marry for conquest, because let's bear in mind there was no love lost between him and his wife, Alienor, he married a woman whom was very strong-willed and quite the brilliant woman. But the problem was, Alienor did not like being... Okay, she was used to being a queen. She wasn't used to being, kind of not important and little more than a breeding machine. Because the thing is, he was a firm mummy's boy. In some ways, what's interesting is that his son Jean, or John, was exactly like him in personality and tastes. So, Jean and Henri were both mummy's boys to an extent, although Jean was also a daddy's boy. Henri, I don't know if he was, but he obviously revered Mathilde because there's a lot of court cases and whatnot and diplomacy pleas that were put before her so that she might talk to her son. Many went to Alienor in the same vein with Jean. Yeah. The trouble is, Henri did not arguably marry his mother, but someone who was to prove much more fractious than her. The thing is, Mathilde did have a certain thread of loyalty in her. Alienor is an Aquitanian noblewoman. Aquitaine was never a breeding ground for strong loyalty. But she was loyal to her sons. We must give her absolute credit for that. But she was not loyal to her husband. On the other hand, Henri was really not a good husband. He cheated on her. He cheated her in some ways of her inheritance. But on the other hand, she turned her sons against him later. So, tit for tat. Now, that said, the marriage was a grand, sweeping affair. The two had met in 1151. They obviously hit it off. They're both passionate people. Alienor was a descendant of the troubadour, le Duc Troubadour, or the Troubadour Duke. Désolé. Translating Dan Jones' stuff to French there was a little tricky. And the trouble is, Louis who was the current king sitting on the lily throne, was to, how shall I put it? He was very monkish. He was monastic in nature and taste. He was raised in a monastery. He was supposed to become a monk. But Louis would prove himself incompetent, to say the least. Historians have tried to rescue his reputation time and again. It just cannot be done. He was an incompetent buffoon. He didn't know when to not attack, and he did not know when to diplomatize, and he did not know when to do anything. He always made the wrong call at the wrong time. Arguably, he was France's King John in some ways. He was just such an incompetent and buffoonish figure. The humorous thing is, he's not the worst king of France to ever sit the throne. That honor would belong to Jean II and also Charles VI. It's hard to determine which one's worst. Now, Charles VI arguably had madness to hide behind. But strangely, Charles VI fathered a halfway competent son and was able to inspire loyalty. Jean II just deliberately sabotaged his own kingdom and tried to destroy it very actively. So you have here, Louis though ranks as amongst the worst. He is a terrible king. Like, it's hard to find someone worse than him. Louis VII is also a very unlikable figure because, as pious as he is, and that's a good thing, he wasn't like, he lacked the wisdom and judgment of Louis IX, Saint Louis, who's a very likable fellow. Though Louis IX could be a little distant to his kids and wife, and a bit of a mummy's boy as well. Louis VII, but we have to give Louis VII one thing. He happened upon the most salient strategy to defeat Henri, turn the sons against the father. He did happen upon the correct strategy, and when he did, he didn't let up. But the problem is he didn't let up, and that often led to clergymen turning on him because they felt on certain holy days and on certain incidences and at certain times, knock it off. The trouble is, on the other hand, Louis did do a great job with his son, Philippe d'Auguste, who would be one of the greatest kings in French history. So he was obviously a very good father. And his daughters, we don't hear anything negative about outside of Alice, who had an affair with Henri II. So, but even then, Henri could be seductive and charismatic. I'm not going to fault a young woman for falling in love. But Philippe, what an accomplishment. So on that front, and on the other hand, Philippe proved incompetent when grooming his heir. Louis VIII was not a real accomplishment as a son. But he was doing a better job grooming his grandson, Louis IX. So you got to balance it out a little. And so you have, on the other hand, Alienor, who, honestly, her dash to Anjou in 1152, is one of the most amazing incidences in history. Like, this woman, the minute she was divorced, she acted like a Plantagenet. She raced into action. Like, you cannot call this woman a wallflower. As soon as she got wind that her husband was planning to get rid of her, or at least to imprison her, or in a monastery or something, she raced into action. He had, like, in Mals, that is to say March, she made a perilous journey through the Loire Valley on the road from Beaugency to Poitiers, the principal seat of her duchy, moving with such haste that, her would-be kidnappers, who came primarily in two directions, they were namely Théobald V and Geoffroy Plantagenet the Younger. Geoffroy the Younger, Henri's 16-year-old brother, was determined to waylay her, and if they caught her, she'd be forced into a marriage she wouldn't want. Alienor, though, was determined to have her own way. And as soon as she got home, she got Henri on the phone. Kidding there. There were no phones back then. And told him basically, hurry the heck up. I've already started without you. I mean, get over here to the marriage bed. I'm joking. Actually, she probably did get started without him. Oh, come on. He was a manly man. Like, every woman wanted him in that era. No, I'm serious. Like, the thing is, the dude was popular.
It's like I had the mental thought of him getting the carrier pigeon, opening it up to read it, another one coming by with the message, hurry up. The third one pops by with the same with a similar message.
And by the time he's headed out, there's a fourth and seventh one.
Exactly.
Through to the seventh one already there.
Exactly. That's the mental thought I had.
Well, yeah. Now, she ended up... But let's face it, he could not dash as fast as her. Because she knew her life, and I can't say her virginity because she was a mother of two by then. But, like, her life and her fate were hanging in the balance. Bear in mind, she got to Aquitaine in March. Now, she got divorced in March. She arrived there in March. And he arrived in Poitiers on the 18th of May. So, like, he didn't waste too much time. He wasted about 2 months. But, like, it would take time for the messenger to get to him. And bear in mind, Henri can move with all haste, like her. And he hurried on over. Now, obviously, the buffoon was the big loser here. And he screwed up. And Dan Jones tries to defend him, but there's no defense for this kind of incompetency. He should not have allowed Alienor out. He let her loose. Everything that happens afterwards is his fault. He may as well have married her off to Henri. It's basically, you had one job, not to flub it up, hero. Now, from this mistake would come... Let me see. Counting... Let's see. This was in 1152. The last real conflicts over landed titles in France. Arguably the 100 Years' War. We're looking at 1453. 301 years. Because Louis was a buffoon. Comme... Moi, je suis français. Me, I'm French. But there's something very odd about our rulers. Our rulers have a lot more in common in some ways with, weirdly, China, Scotland, and Japan in one regard. Now, this is the fascinating thing about England, and I'd even argue Germany, even to an extent Spain. Their leaders don't tend to flub up as badly when they flub up. And when they succeed, okay, the thing about England, Germany, Spain, even to an extent Korea, the leaders, like, they win incremental victories. They don't win always on the same grand scale. Not always. They often do. They can. I mean, England alone is an argument for that. Heck, Germany, Dunkirk, That was a major victory. So, like, frick. Look at Waterloo. But most other countries will win small skirmishes, small victories, then a few major ones. And when it comes to losing, they seem to lose like on smaller scale, and they don't tend to lose half the country or something and then have to fight to regain the other half. France, China, Japan, flub-ups are like that. They are much more monumental. And I include Japan because Japan makes a slight mistake in its history. 100 to 200 years of civil war. And no unity and chaos and blood. That's Japan. China has spent more often than not most of its history divided. I know that's not a popular statement to make, but typically it's broken up into a number of states. But when China wins, boy, the victories are pretty important sometimes. Or they have to win incrementally, small little victories. Like, arguably, the Mongol dynasty was overthrown by a 1,000 paper cuts. But you look at the Han, it was 1,000 paper cuts that destroyed it. It wasn't some grand big event. Deng Zhuo was just the last nail in the coffin for the Han. But then you look at the decisions to invite the barbarian Xiongnu as extra forces, as barbarian generals and barbarian armies by the Cao Wei and Shuma Jin dynasties. That's a major flub up. I would argue they were basically generaling their own armies against themselves. And what ended up happening is they had to spend hundreds of years regaining their own lands after that. France, like, you look at the battles of Poitiers and Toul. Charles Martel won major victories. Charlemagne, like, wow, every victory was a major one. So, like, then you got his son. Had some victories, had some losses. The empire had to get broken up. But then you look at the next few Carolingians, they really screw up. And not all of them are incompetent, but they really messed up. You look at, like I said, France will go for really bad rulers and then really good ones. But you look at, like I said, China gets really bad rulers, like really bad ones. But then they get these amazing monumental figures, like the first 4 rulers of the Tang dynasty. Those guys were freaking amazing. And then you got class clowns going clown world on everyone. But you look at, well, like I said, France. Louis VII. His father was an amazing king. Louis VI was incredible. Most of the Capets were men who won small victories, and one or two major ones. From Hugues all the way to Louis VI, you had really good rulers. One of them was called Castle Grabber. Le Preneur, or Le Conquérant de Château. The Castle Conqueror, or the Castle Grabber. That's an incredible title. Henri, le Premier of France, was an incredible king. He's less well known because, well, he's not as popular. Philippe le Premier was so-so. He was a mixed bag. But Louis VI, wow, what a king, what a king. Louis VII, oh my gosh. Louis VIII, whoa. You have Philippe III, a non-personality. Philippe le Bel, great king. All his successors up until Charles V sucked. They destroyed France. They lost the kingdom. And to, of all countries, England. No offense to England. England had one of their most remarkable kings, Edward III. Kudos to them. But France had no right losing those wars. It's not until Charles V that France began actually remembering how to win a bloody war. And that's the thing. Like, you'll have major defeats, major tyrants and bad rulers, and then you'll have really monumental leaders and statesmen. This is something I've noticed with French, Japanese, and Chinese history. Nobunaga's quite the tyrant. Same with Toyotomi Hideyoshi. But Toyotomi Hideyoshi was a remarkable figure who won remarkable victories. Same with Nobunaga. Now that doesn't mean I'd want to share a pint with them or something, because who wants to? They were nuts, but they were good statesmen, arguably. Well, sort of. With Nobunaga, he tended to abuse his own generals, so okay. But he was still a remarkable general and leader. Tokugawa was an amazing statesman. No, he was an amazing statesman. He had wisdom, not something that every leader has. But you look at all the Ashikaga rulers going back to the late 15th century. The thing is, the first Muromachi leaders, from Ashikaga Takauji up until about 1450, were competent men. Then all their successors sucked. That led to the Sengoku Jidai. That was an active thing. The later Setai shogun were actively making decisions that make Commodus from ancient Rome look good. China, arguably, the later Tang rulers were actively sinking their own empire. France, the 100 Years' War, it was not won because Charles Set was a good king. Actually, it was won in spite of him. Jeanne d'Arc was determined to win the war. He was determined to lose it. And no matter how bad a leader he was, he could not stop his generals from winning the war for him. Yes, he was trying to lose the war. And from 1428 to 1453, he was trying to lose. But his generals kept winning him the war. It's incredible. Now, later in his reign, he was trying to sink his own kingdom again. But his son had to keep on trying to save it. What a king. And the trouble is, he then began creating trouble for Louis. Louis XI struggled his entire reign to put an end to the obvious, what one can call the later 100 Years' War period, which is to say the period from 1453 to 1481 was an active cleanup. Well, actually, 1483 is more like it. Was Louis trying to clean up after his father and trying to clean up after also the problems of Bourbon, that is to say, the problems of the after effects of the 100 Years' War. So, yeah, you've got right there Louis XI just struggling to do cleanup. And hey, he massively cleaned up. After him, you had a really, 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 really bad couple of kings. And until Francois Le Premier, who was pretty darn good, but he lost major battles and defeats that France would not scrub off until, to an extent, Henri IV. And Louis XIII, to be fair. Louis XIII was an amazing king. So, yeah, I know that we kind of stretched this out. It's just a lot of the effects, or after effects, I should say, of Louis's poor decision-making process and stupidity would tear apart France. And weirdly, Scotland, and even England to an extent, and Germany and Italy and Spain for hundreds of years. Just goes to show one bad divorce can mess up all of history. So guys, next time you choose a wife, be careful, because a wrong wife can ruin your life and your legacy. A good wife can really make it. I mean, the same can be said about how you handle your divorces. I mean, Louis messed up really badly. I mean, come on, not everyone can choose their wives as well as Charlemagne or Augustus Caesar, because Augustus chose well. I know people like to say, oh, well, Tiberius, Caligula, wow. Yeah, but I don't like to stalk that up to Augustus, really. He chose himself a really good wife. She was a looker, a great politician, a genius. Honestly, I would marry Livia. No, if I met Olivia, like, I would marry her. Well, yeah, but her in the future after you're deaf, her no wait, her great grandkids and great grandkids will be messed up. Yeah, but I don't have any way of knowing that. So yeah. But anyways, Louis, bad king. Philippe, good king. Henri II from Anjou, amazing king. Ah, he's amazing. And honestly, when it comes to choosing his wife, he chose poorly and well all at the same time. Alienor is a good wife in some ways, but she's also a bad one. Like, if you want a wife who will look out for your kids, go for her. The problem is she's not going to look out for you. So she's a good mom, not exactly a housewife. And Henri was kind of looking for a trad wife, and that's really not what he got. And honestly, dude, why would you even bother trying? Like, just, yeah. But on the other hand, you look for a woman who will look out for your kids. You look for a good mother. That's the best thing you can do when looking for a marriage. And maybe someone who likes reading. And who looks good. And takes care of herself. Like, but with Alienor, she did all those things except look out for him. Honestly, maybe in his latter years, he should have divorced. Because what's she going to do? Oh, well, I'll just take my lands back. Aha! From Richard. Good luck. That's what he should have done, maybe. I don't know. But we'll see. But honestly, Henri's a fascinating figure. So tune in next time for the next podcast. We'll be reading from the same book and doing the same conclusion. I'm joking. Actually, our next podcast is probably going to be a Joseph Campbell one, which will be pretty fun. So stay tuned for that. Well, that'll be for Substack, I mean. As for History Corner, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, well, you can tune into our Substack, which will be in the description or in the comment section down below. And you can also check out our book, Crown of Blood, which is partially history inspired. And also tune in next time and subscribe for, the next Henri podcast or the upcoming Capetien podcast, which we will be doing, which is inspired by an amazing English book called Capetians, or Capetien, by Jim Bradbury. And it's probably the best book on the first few centuries of this same dynasty of France that was to rule for almost 1,000 years.